Hi, fourth graders. This is Mrs. Gold. We're going to learn how to express fractions with a denominator of 10 as an equivalent fraction with a denominator of 100. And we're going to do this by exploring some real-life scenarios. Okay, so before we get started, let's just refresh our brain on the basics of fractions. So, what is a fraction? A fraction is a number that expresses equal parts of a whole object or a set of objects. So we can see right here with this circular object, we have one whole circle, and then we can see these little dotted lines running through here that we have four separate equal pieces that make up this one whole circle. And then we see this piece right here, and this piece is being taken away. So we see just one of those pieces. So we'll go ahead and write that down as the piece that's being taken away. And that's out of four separate equal pieces that make the whole. So 4, 1/4 is what we have here. So let's take a look at this. This is our numerator. And a numerator shows how many parts of the denominator are taken. 1 in this instance. Denominator, our denominator shows how many equal parts the item is divided into, which is 4, like we just discussed here. We have 4 equal pieces that make a whole. And then in our second example, right here, we have 4 separate objects. We have 4 smiley faces, and we can see that one of these 4 are pink. So that would also be expressed 1/4. Because we have just one of these objects is pink, and then there are 4 total objects. So the 4 is our denominator. Then another term that we're going to quickly review is equivalent. An equivalent means they have the same value. And we will better understand what equivalent means as we move forward with this lesson. I'm going to share a real-life scenario with you where I had to express a fraction with a denominator of 10 as a fraction with a denominator of 100. You can see here, this is a text message that one of my friends sent me. We were throwing a surprise party for our friend Miranda, and we ordered a sheet cake, and they cut the sheet cake into 10 giant pieces. There's 100 people at the party, and so I guess we could just let only 10 people have 10 giant pieces of cake, or we had to discover a way to cut the cake equally for all 100 people. Okay, so I made you an example. You can see in this first cake here, that's what it looked like. It was 10 giant pieces, and obviously that wasn't gonna work. We needed 100 pieces for all the people at the party, and obviously we wanted them to be cut equally so that some people weren't getting giant pieces and some people were getting tiny pieces. So I decided, okay, I'm gonna break this down. I'm gonna focus on what I need to do with just one piece, and I know that I'm going to need hundredths instead of tenths. So let's go ahead and express the fraction that's shown for this cake right here. And that's going to be 1/10. The reason that it's 1/10 is because it has 10 equal pieces. That's our denominator. And there's one green piece right here because that's the piece that we're focusing on, trying to figure out how many pieces does that one piece need to be? Because if we can figure that out, then we know how to cut the rest of the cake. So let's think about this. Let's think about what we know about numbers so that we can make this 1/10 into hundredths. So 10 is really just one grouping of 10 individual units, and 100 is 10 groupings of 10. So if we know that 100 is 10 groupings of 10, then what can we do? Well, we can multiply 10 times 10 to get 100. So our denominator now is 100, and that reflects what we're seeing here. So we have tenths to 100, and we did that by multiplying our denominator 10 by 10. It's 100. So now to figure out what to do with this one piece, how are we going to cut this one piece? Well, we obviously, when we have hundredths, we can't have this size piece. That just won't work. We know that we can only fit 10 pieces that size on this cake. So what we're going to do is look right here. See how this piece is the same size, or these pieces, I should say, are the same size as this one piece right here. There is actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 pieces. You can see that the 10 pieces have the same numerical value as the one piece. It's the same portion of the cake. Even though there's 10 pieces here and there's one piece here, we can see that it's the same portion. That is what's going to make this first fraction of 1/10 equivalent to this fraction that's in hundredths. So now we just need to figure out, what do we need to do with this one? Well, we see right here that we have 10 pieces. So how do we get 10? We can multiply 1 times 10 to get 10. So we went ahead and multiplied our numerator that's representing this piece times 10, representing the 10 pieces that are shown here. And then we remember what we did with our denominator. We multiplied that by 10 as well. So basically what we're doing is we're taking the fraction that represents this cake and we're making an equivalent fraction, which is 10 100ths. So we can look at that and see that every piece that's this size, see, we see all these equal giant pieces on this sheet cake, all of those pieces are going to have 10 pieces inside of them when we make it into a hundredths cake. So if we cut this cake into hundredths. Okay, we're going to look at a little bit of a different perspective. Remember that fractions represent equal parts of a whole or of a set of objects. And what we have here is a set of objects. And we can see that there are 2 rows right here, and that there are 5 in each row. So we can multiply that 2 times 5 and see that we have 10 total objects. And so since we know we have 10 total, we can go ahead and make that our denominator. Put that down right here. Okay, so when we look at this, what do we see? We see 3 blue party poppers out of the total of 10 present. So since those are the separate ones, we can make that our numerator and this fraction is expressing that 3/10 of the party poppers are blue. Well, let's kind of do what we did on the first example. There's 100 people at the party, and we want to keep this same pattern of 3/10 of the party poppers being blue. And so we need to convert this tenths to hundredths. We need to express this fraction with a denominator of 10 as a fraction with a denominator of 100. Well, how do we get our tenths to be 100? We discussed that in the last example. We know that we need to multiply that 10 times 10 because that will give us 100. And because we are wanting to have equivalent fractions, we're going to multiply our numerator by 10 as well. And that will give us 30 100ths. So whenever we have our party and we give all of these little party poppers as favors, we're going to have 30 blue party poppers out of the total 100 party poppers. Because we are marvelous mathematicians and we can express a fraction with denominator 10 as a fraction with denominator 100, I think that we're ready to go ahead and try out some of these problems with just the numbers because we know how the math works. So let's take a look at this first example here. We have 7/10. So what's our first step? Step 1. We're going to multiply our denominator 10 by 10 because the instructions say that we're going to express fraction as hundredths so that we can get 100. So 10 times 10, that's 100. So we can go ahead and slip that in to our denominator space right here. And then step 2 is we need to go ahead and do to our numerator, which is our 7 in this case. We need to go ahead and do to our numerator what we did to our denominator so that our fractions are equivalent. So 7 times 10, because remember, that's what we did with our denominator. So 7 times 10 is 70. So we can put that in the space where our numerator belongs, and we can express 7/10 as the equivalent fraction 70/100. Okay, so let's try this second problem right here. We have 9/10. Let's walk through it one more time. Step 1, we're going to multiply our denominator 10 times 10 because we know that will give us 100, so we can put that in our denominator space. So we now are expressing this fraction in tenths as a fraction as in hundredths. And then step 2, we're going to multiply our numerator, which in this case is 9. 9 times what? Times 10, because we are going to do the same thing to our numerator as we did with our denominator so that we have equivalent fractions, so that the same portion of the whole is taken away. So 9 times 10 is 90. So we're going to express the fraction of 9/10 as 90/100. Great job. You are a magnificent mathematician.